Greetings. I noticed this YouTube community post, which was put up a little over a week ago by our beloved friend.
Our beloved, our beloved.
Our beloved friend, the good doctor over at the We Woke Now channel. And so I wanted to read through his post and offer some very brief comments. And so with that, let's get right to it. The post begins as follows, quote, I know identity for some within this awakening can be a challenge, especially for those of a mixed background, more specifically, mixed with Caucasians. Some can be brutal and inconsiderate of the impact their words can have on the subject. I want to say to those of you who are going through this struggle, the Most High understands our conditions of being sold into slaves. He understands your situation of being who you are, end quote. And then he quotes the King James Version of Joel chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, and then he continues as follows, quote, Every nation that participated in the transatlantic world war and the Arabic slave trade or war have raped and exploited every aspect of our being. But Yah has a plan, and he made a promise to his people. Questions. How are we as a people able, through DNA, old history books, and oral traditions, to confirm who we are? Blood transfusion, end quote. And then he quotes the 20th and 21st verses of that same third chapter from the book of Joel because he thinks the King James renderings, the King James version's phraseology in Joel 3:21, which says, quote, I will cleanse their blood, end quote. He thinks that refers to some sort of blood transfusion. Now, as a cursory look at other verses which use the relevant verb, even in the King James version, will reveal that the relevant verb can mean to clear or to acquit, and perhaps Psalm 19:13 and so too Exodus 21:19 are particularly relevant there. Honestly, there's really no reason to think that in Joel it must be referring to a quote unquote blood transfusion. But that aside, what's interesting for me about this post is that it pretty much captures a clear abandonment of a patrilineal definition of Israelite, on the part of the good doctor. Now, I suppose one could argue that we saw a move away from a patrilineal definition of Israelite in his indirect or less than tacit endorsement of Eran el-Hayek's platform, as some sort of standard for determining who's an Israelite. And perhaps so too, we saw a move away from a patrilineal definition even as far back as the appeals to GEDmatch. But here, the good doctor is pretty much making it clear that his position is that even if you don't descend paternally from Jacob, you can still be an Israelite. And if your blood contains some sort of foreign element which came down your paternal line, God is somehow going to cleanse your blood with some sort of blood transfusion. And I'm not sure, but maybe Kelly thinks that in the future, God will give certain Israelites a new haplogroup. I don't know. But beyond that, here's an important question. How does Kelly think God is going to decide who is or is not worthy of such a quote-unquote blood transfusion, right? To insinuate that there are Israelites who do not descend paternally from Jacob raises the question, what then makes one an Israelite on the good doctor's model? While Kelly wasn't explicit about this, I suspect that those who are familiar with him are going to guess that his assumptions about who is or is not an Israelite are based on outward appearance. And with all due respect to the good doctor, I don't think he can seriously say that it would be, for example, based on some sort of autosomal standard. I mean, he could make that claim, but honestly, our friend has pretty much abandoned the field on that topic. He once promoted GEDmatch as capable of showing who is or is not an Israelite. And as was just noted, more recently, he seemed to endorse it on el-Hayek's platform as the right tool for that job. But he hasn't made any meaningful contributions to discussions on the methodological questions which surround these sorts of approaches. Rather, he's, with all due respect, he's insulated himself and his arguments from such questions via his channel, which might frankly be described as a heavily censored echo chamber. But of course, the good doctor is always welcome to comment here. Unlike his channel, I won't censor him, nor will I censor any of his supporters. And if you're one of his supporters, you are most welcome to share your thoughts or your questions or your objections here. You're invited, in fact, to try to make sense of what the good doctor was alluding to and to grapple with the responses that might receive. In the meantime, I'll share a closing thought, and it's this. Channels like We Woke Now consistently assure their followers that there is all this undeniable evidence for their vague claims, but that then leaves some of their followers frustrated and wondering, why aren't these claims taken more seriously? Is it merely a conspiracy by the powers that be? Or might an idea that gets protected by copious amounts of censorship, obfuscation, and manipulation lack an intellectual foundation? If your favorite teacher has to try to protect you from questions about their arguments, would it surprise you if those arguments aren't taken very seriously by those who are outside the bubble? Food for thought. But on that note, I'll close this short video here. Feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative, and God bless.